Did you know that onboarding employees is as important as hiring them? However, most companies are doing this wrong according to statistics. So today, we are going to fix this problem at your company, and I'm going to share with you my proven template that you can steal. How to onboard remote employees. I would like you to think about this question. Is it different or the same to onboard customers and onboard employees? This might sound counterintuitive, however, has more similarities than you might believe at first. So let's picture it from the perspective of acquiring customers. Let's say you spend through ads a new customer and you cash in some money. Then that customer is happy with your service and stays for 1 year, then upgrades and even refers to other people. Well done! But if you think enough about it, it's pretty similar to how you onboard people in your team. And this is not about the money, it's about the success of both the employee and the company. Because you spend money to onboard a new hire. You want that person to stay for long and you want that person to be successful. So how to maximize the likelihood of that scenario? And it happens that the statistics are clear. By having a great onboarding, you can increase retention of new hires by 82%. It's not a small achievement. And then they feel up to 18 times more committed to your company. That's crazy. But the thing is that most companies, about 88%, do it wrong according to employees. And a problem, an additional one, is that in a remote environment, this is even harder to do it well. So let's focus on the solutions. Because at the end of the day, you want employees to be successful and fast, you want them to stay and not to quit, and you want them to refer other great people, the same way as a customer. I would like to get to a comparison in which if you would like to build muscle, then it's a common saying to say that half of the work is gym, half of the work is diet. But when it comes to companies, we don't easily see that way. However, it's very similar because if you want your company to grow, you need to spend half of the effort in hiring and half of the effort in onboarding. And it's your responsibility. You cannot just let people in and expect them to figure out everything, because in most cases that won't happen, and that doesn't mean they are not great people. But there are some challenges. For example, it could happen that they are more junior than they believed, which is quite of a challenge in remote mostly. Then it could happen that they are less senior than you thought, or even themselves, which is the fake senior challenge. And also, for example, they are new in the domain. So at the end of the day, a person that could have great potential becomes a person that quits or you fire, and that is sad. So it's better to address that in a way that makes both the company and the employee successful. Moving to a practical side of the things, I have a template that I will walk you through, and you can find in the comments the link to download for free. So let me give you a quick overview to it. This is it. I call it the POD, the Personal Onboarding Document. This is, in this case, a Notion document, but could be a Google Doc, for example, that each newcomer receives when I onboard them. And I have tried this with sales teams, marketing teams, and other types of teams, and many types of roles for the past years in a fully remote environment. It works. So I know that you're going to say, yeah, we could find improvements to this, we could do this in a different way. Yes, we could. But my goal here with this template is not to make things perfect. It's you to make most of the job right with the minimum risk. So let's go to get the 80% of the outcome with 20% of the work. It starts with the title. We basically say that this is an onboarding. We put the name of the person, that it feels personal, and in the end it's a personal document, and the role. This is helpful for them, but also for you, because when you onboard new people, most of the time you can just copy paste and mini customize for the same role or yeah. So what's the structure of this pod? Essentially, we start with the pre-onboarding. This is what happens before you onboard employee. And actions like inviting to specific tools, adding to permissions, scheduling the first meetings, and so on. We talk about the communication and what success looks like. We will see more in this in detail a bit later after the overview. Then we go for the roadmap, what will happen on day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. In some cases, there is a learning roadmap that happens not just in week 1, but up to 3 months or beyond. The learning roadmap happens when you have teams that are more professionalized and you have specific crash courses or materials that you would like the person to learn, and even you might have some tests. And finally, some resources that might be additional. Let's understand each specific part and the best practices and common mistakes. The best practice number 1 is lead with communication. What will happen is that in remote, there is under communication. That's a big issue. So what you need is to over communicate intentionally. And let's imagine the following scenario. You hire somebody and then the person starts, you have a welcome session with them, let's say half an hour, 1 hour, and then the person has still no access to Slack or Gmail. This is horrendous because if we start like that, imagine how productive the person will be on its first day, probably little. So in the pre-onboarding checklist, you want to minimize this. You want to eliminate these issues. So you should invite and give access to the person, access to Gmail, access to Notion, and so on, days before, so that they start on the right fit, but also they have time, if they want, to do some pre-work. And some people do it. And this is not just something that happens at the beginning, it's something that you should be continuously doing. For example, I don't believe in 1-year reviews. I do reviews with every single employee every 6 months. So if you are in a remote environment, please forget about 1-year reviews. They don't work. They don't prevent your people from quitting. As you can see in the template, you have inviting to tools, adding to permissions. This is who does it. And you can even add by when this should be done. And then you click when it's done. And also the meeting. So you can schedule the welcome session. You can schedule the catch-ups. The way I like to do it is that on week 1, there is a call every single day, and then it starts to reduce from week 2 until we get to a normal level by week 3 or 4, depending on the role. Let's go to the best practice number 2. And this one is fun because it's something that many don't realize that they are doing wrong. So what usually happens, or many times happens, when a company onboards a new employee is that the company has expectations for the employee, of course, but the employee also has its own expectations. And the more junior, the more misalignment there is. So the way to fix that is, and focusing all the efforts from everybody into that, is to have the goal alignment. One example is that, let's say the employee thinks that if he or she succeeds to make a first customer in 1 month, it's great. But second month is also okay because new domain, because never done before, because whatever. Okay. Meanwhile, the company might have more specific standards about what it means to be successful. So it could be that a first customer is in 2 weeks, maximum 3, and beyond that, there is no room for this person at this company. The issue here is that the company has an idea, but doesn't make it tangible. So a manager can have an idea about what is a great salesperson, for example. But since this idea is not made explicit, the manager is not exactly aware many times about how to communicate the success, about how to push the person to success, about how to optimize the time of the newcomer, and that's an issue. So the way to solve that is by making it explicit and writing it. And yeah, I know sometimes it's not that intuitive. So for example, let's say a content writer, how many pieces should that person write per week? Well, it depends, right? Or how many calls should that person should do? Well, it depends, right? However, think about that. Look for benchmarks. You can Google or you can go to ChatGPT, but Perplexity or Google is better. So search for benchmarks for activity and outcomes for a specific role. For example, SDR benchmark. And you will find that there are, for a reason actually. And you should talk about this in the pod, but also you should talk about it in the first session. I'm aware that many companies like to onboard people in a different way, talk much more soft about it, but this is a remote environment. For example, for a salesperson, one benchmark says that there should be about 40 calls per week. This is not something that is written in the Bible, so it could be less, it could be more. The important is the outcome, but you need to balance them, and you need to you need to have a way for people to understand if they are progressing or not against that goal. Also, this is like your North Star. You need to touch base often about these goals and how the employee is progressing against. And you need to listen and offer help proactively. So a great ways to do that is through the one-to-ones that you might want to have on a weekly basis, on the monthly reviews that you might want to have in day 30, day 60, day 90, and also in the dashboards. Because yes, you should allow people to understand their progress without you, and you should allow them to see how different their performance is compared to other people. So they can ask peers, learn from them, and they understand better how to get to a specific goal. There is another best practice that usually is not done correctly. So let's imagine that you are at a startup and there is a specific culture. Startups are more aware about the importance of culture because if you want to scale up and you do a cultural misfit hire, then that's going to be a big issue. What happens is that, so you join a company and they tell you on the first day that they want somebody who is proactive, transparent, and all of these things. But these are buzzwords. What do they mean? I mean, culture is about behaviors and feelings. So by communicating buzzwords, you don't really teach anybody how they should feel and behave. That's why when it comes to cultural integration, what I like to do is to bring the theory into practical examples. For no reason, you should expect new people to just catch up on the culture. You should not just communicate the buzzwords like no ego and yeah, what does it mean? Instead, what I like to do is to go from culture to operational values. Let's see an example of this. Imagine a simple table that allows you to think about this and communicate this better. So let's talk about transparency. What does transparency mean as a cultural value? So the way it's represented in the day-to-day is that the startup or the company encourages you to use public channels on Slack, even in the case when the conversation could be a private one-to-one. It's there for a reason. So what I like to do is to teach people on day one, but also reinforce that about what it cultural value means and what it represents for the person. So we use public channels because we are in a very interconnected industry and we might need to involve another person and start from scratch, removes all the context, make us lose time, blah, blah, blah. So think about that. And the inspiration for you in this case is that you can think about when things break. So let's say, for example, you onboard a new person and this new person doesn't say hi on Slack. This new person doesn't add a profile picture right away. This new person doesn't contribute to Slack channels, the public ones. This new person doesn't share what he or she learns. Looks much clearer, right? That's it. So in the welcome session and in the pod, the very first thing is communication, to give an overview about where things should happen. And you can add notes here that are extremely important. For example, the thing about public channels. You should make explicit what matters, the behaviors you expect. And also, it will take time, so you need to reinforce them necessarily in one-to-ones. You need to give feedback about this. And as you can see, for example, one of the items in the pod is to learn this. That could be a video, and then you can have a call, or you can just have a one-to-one session live. Depends on the several factors. But as you can see, this is interactive. This is owned by the new employee. So as he or she goes on, they can check the items. And this one is super important. So it's time to performance. The newcomer to be and to feel successful. But how to do that? So there are some recommendations I can make to you. The first one is that you should assign the first 1 or 2 mini projects. The reason for that is that people tend to underestimate how tricky things are. Mostly if you give them new materials, like they are in a new industry, they are selling a new type of product, and so on. So even for people that you might believe they are more senior, you should assign them basic to-dos to get started. I know this doesn't work for everybody, but what I realized is that it's better to go from less to more, at least for most people, than to give too much freedom, because freedom creates too much friction and excuses. Another point is that you should start small, ready to the previous one. So you should try to minimize what could go wrong in these first or few deliveries. For example, let's say that you you want the person to do an analysis. So give them something to warm up, to start understanding. For example, let's say it's product analytics. Allow the person to understand what's the data layer. If it's a writer, give them something simple, like a easier topic, writing from scratch instead of updating, and so on. And you're going to increase the freedom progressively. Also, something that you should be planning for is that you should test the most critical skills first. For example, if you want the person to be able to imitate your writing style or your sales pitch, you should know how you're going to test that and by when in the onboarding plan. And then the less critical, you also plan for them, maybe on week 3, week 4, whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, onboarding is not just something that happens on week 1, it's something that happens until there is ramp up. Okay, and kind of mentioned before, but you should help people understand where they stand. So a way to picture it, mostly for non-senior profiles, is activity and output. So if you expect, for example, let's say 40 calls per day, and the person starts at 10 calls per day, you should see and encourage the person to increment this day by day, help them understand where they struggle, help them how to do things, and keep increasing. And yeah, sort of like commented before, so you should schedule when people should learn about some skills, when should they prove. You should have a map of the success. If for you it's not crystal clear when people should be successful, how much, with what resources, what gaps or problems could appear, don't hire the person. Delay the process. It doesn't need to be perfect, and many times it cannot be perfect, but try to minimize the risks, because it's not just your company at stake, it's also the person's life at stake. And what you want is everybody to succeed. So focus on how to do that. As you can see here in the roadmap, this is one example, could be different, but we have week 1 and then we have day 1, day 2, and then it starts to be less and less, and it could cover up to 6 weeks many times. And some things could be beyond, like if you check here, for example, there are things that happen even on month 2, month 3. Another common issue of remote environment is that it's harder to make people feel like home, to say it somehow. So to feel comfortable speaking, saying what they don't know, what they don't understand. And if you combine it with some specific cultures where people communicate problems less, so that's going to be an issue for remote work and onboarding employees. Happily, there are ways to improve on that. I cannot cover everything here, but what I will do is to give you a few suggestions to make it much smoother. So when it comes to team integration, you can start with a welcome session where the direct manager is on a call with the person itself. Sometimes there are more people here, depending on the role. Usually the way I go about it is that there is maximum 3 people in the call, and usually 2. Then another thing is that you should schedule get-to-knows that are not necessarily about work. So what you want to do here is that you want the new person to know other people at the personal level, and also to understand better where they can create an impact and the people they benefit. So for this, you can schedule get-to-knows of 15 to 25 minutes depending on the bucket, and you can give for this some questions that might be used or might not be. And the idea for this is that people tend to focus mostly on the company level. However, you should also encourage personal questions. What are their hobbies? What they like about X? And so on. The interpersonal relationships matter a lot. And when we are in a remote environment, things can get too much formal. And that's not good, because we need to be social entity. However, when you have just hired somebody, there is the problem. If you want to focus for a goal, then you cannot do all the social time. And if the company is not super small, then this is going to backfire. So here, HR might tell you one thing. Personally, I approach this in a specific way. So I use a 3-level bucket. The bucket 1 is the people the new hire will be collaborating the most with. And we should have the get-to-knows on week 1. Then we go for the bucket 2. And here, this happens on week 2 and week 3. It's about the people that the newcomer will collaborate sometimes, but not every day or not every week. Usually, this is about people in different teams. And then you have the bucket 3. In this case, it's different. It's the rest of the people. It's people they won't be collaborating directly and so on. So in this case, the get to know depends on different mechanisms. So it's about cafe roulettes that is similar to get to know but more different and more extended. You can have the all hands meeting and so on and so forth. And one last point is the areas of responsibility. Imagine the following table in which you have the team, the area of responsibility, the responsible person, and the backup person. So what happens is that we tend to forget all the things we learned and how fast things can change. So what happens mostly when you onboard people who are less cross-functional is that they get lost easily. So imagine this as a document where you give a reference for everybody at the company to understand if they need something, who does it? Who creates the visuals for the website? Who creates the copy or the text for the email? And so on. So you just write area of responsibility, it's a one-liner, the team that does it, the person who does it, and in case this person is not available, if there is somebody who can do it. Sometimes there is somebody, sometimes not, sometimes there is a patch to make it. Alright, this has been 5 best practices together with a proven template to onboard new people. Again, there are many things that we could change, add on the top of this. For example, as commented, the pre-onboarding could be an internal document, and also you would need to have the PIP, personal improvement plan. You might want to have one-to-one templates for all managers, internal employee documents, so that you document the progress of the person, what they like, what they don't, how they like to communicate, and so on. But that's it. So having a great onboarding is mostly thinking from the other perspective, trying to assume less and make things clearer, and also thinking that there are less real senior people than we would like to think. So that's it. I hope this mini workshop and template about how to onboard remote employees has been helpful for you. I will be doing more videos like this, so if you would like me to focus on specific matters or if you have specific questions, please leave them in the comments and subscribe to the channel if you want to get more videos like this. Thank you for watching. This is Enrique Baltasar and have a nice day.